6 years ago, Meredith looked into my eyes on our wedding day and promised nothing would ever come between us. I believed every word. Last month, I sat alone in our living room, staring at my ring, remembering when she said, "If you are insecure, Burton, just leave." That night I left. But what I did next, she never saw coming. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from today. Hit like and subscribe. Let me show you how one sentence destroyed 6 years of marriage. My name is Burton, and for 6 years, I thought I had the kind of marriage people write songs about, the kind that makes single people believe in love and makes cynics roll their eyes. I met Meredith at a tech conference in downtown Austin. I was 28 years old, presenting a new software framework to a room full of investors and industry professionals. She was sitting in the third row representing the marketing team from an advertising agency that was scouting for potential partnerships. After my presentation, she approached me with a business card and a smile that made me forget every word I had just spoken on stage. We talked for 3 hours that evening, missing the networking dinner entirely. By the time the conference ended, I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. 2 years later, I proposed on the rooftop of the same hotel where we first met. She cried, said yes before I could finish my sentence, and told me she had been waiting for that moment since the day we met. Our wedding was small but meaningful, just family and close friends in a garden ceremony outside Austin. Her vows included a promise that stuck with me through everything that followed. She held my hands, looked directly into my eyes, and said, "Burton, I promise you that I will never let anyone or anything come between us. You are my person, and I will protect what we have with everything I am." I believed her. God, I believed her with every fiber of my being. For the first 4 years, our marriage was everything I had hoped for. We bought a house in the suburbs, a 3-bedroom place, with a backyard big enough for the kids we planned to have someday. I worked as a software engineer, climbing steadily through the ranks at a respected tech company. Meredith got promoted to marketing manager at her agency, handling bigger clients and more responsibility. We were building something real together. Every night I would come home to her, and every morning I would wake up grateful that she was beside me. I trusted her completely. That was never a question in my mind. When she worked late, I understood. When she traveled for client meetings, I supported her. When her phone buzzed at odd hours, I never thought twice about it. Trust was the foundation of everything we had built together, and I never imagined that foundation could crack. About 4 months before everything fell apart, I started noticing small changes. Meredith began coming home later than usual. At first, it was once or twice a week, always with a reasonable explanation. A big project was launching. A demanding client needed extra attention. A deadline had been moved up. I never questioned it. Instead, I tried to make her life easier. I took over most of the cooking, made sure the house was clean when she got home, handled the laundry and groceries without being asked. I wanted to be the kind of husband who supported his wife through stressful times. But then the phone situation started. Her device would light up at 10 or 11 at night, sometimes even past midnight. When I glanced over, she would quickly flip it face down or take it to another room to respond. She changed her passcode without telling me. When I asked who was texting so late, she would wave it off casually. "Just work stuff. Derek needs feedback on a campaign." Derek. That name started appearing more and more in our conversations, always mentioned in passing, always presented as nothing significant. I noticed how she smiled differently when those late-night messages arrived. It was not the tired smile of someone dealing with work stress. It was something brighter, something that used to be reserved for me. I pushed the thought away, told myself I was being paranoid. Meredith loved me. She had promised me she would never let anything come between us. She would not lie to me. The first time I met Derek was at Meredith's company holiday party in early December. She had talked about him occasionally, describing him as the creative director she collaborated with on major accounts. I expected someone professional and distant, the way most work relationships are. What I encountered was something entirely different. Derek was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he was attractive. When Meredith introduced us, he shook my hand briefly, his eyes barely registering my presence before sliding back to her. "So, this is the famous Burton," he said with a half-smile that felt more like a dismissal than a greeting. "Meredith talks about you sometimes." Sometimes? 6 years of marriage, and I was reduced to sometimes. Throughout the party, I watched them interact. Derek stood close to her, closer than professional courtesy required. He touched her shoulder when making a point, let his hand linger on her back when guiding her through the crowd. He whispered things that made her laugh too loudly, lean toward him too naturally. Every joke he told seemed designed to create a private moment between them, as if I was an outsider intruding on their connection. I stood there with a drink in my hand, watching my wife light up for another man in ways she had not lit up for me in months. When she finally returned to my side, I asked about Derek as casually as I could manage. She rolled her eyes and patted my arm. "He is just a coworker, Burton. Do not make it weird." On the drive home, I stayed quiet, processing what I had witnessed. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was how creative professionals interacted with each other. Maybe the advertising world had different boundaries than the tech industry I was used to. I wanted to believe that so badly. When we got home, Meredith fell asleep within minutes, but I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that the woman beside me was still the same person who had made those vows 6 years ago. 2 weeks after the holiday party, on a quiet Sunday morning, Meredith stepped into the shower while I was making coffee. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, and when it buzzed, my eyes moved to it instinctively. The screen displayed a preview of a text message from Derek. "Last night was amazing. Cannot stop thinking about you." I read those 11 words over and over my heart, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The coffee machine beeped behind me, but I could not move. My hands were shaking. Every alarm in my body was screaming that something was terribly wrong, but my mind refused to accept it. There had to be an explanation. There had to be context I was missing. When Meredith came out of the bathroom, hair wrapped in a towel, I confronted her immediately. I kept my voice calm, held up her phone, and asked her directly what Derek meant by that message. She did not flinch, did not hesitate. She took the phone from my hand, glanced at the screen, and laughed softly. "Burton, seriously. We had a client presentation last night. It went really well, and Derek was just excited about how it turned out. You are reading way too much into this." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to accept that explanation and move on with our Sunday. But something in her delivery felt rehearsed, too smooth, too prepared. Still, I nodded and let it go because the alternative was too painful to consider. Over the following weeks, I started paying closer attention to her social media. What I found made my stomach turn. Meredith had tagged Derek in dozens of posts over the past few months. Lunch meetings, coffee runs after work drinks, even a weekend trip to an art gallery that she had told me was a client obligation. In every photo, they stood close together, smiling like two people sharing a secret. The comments under her posts were worse. Derek left hearts and fire emojis under her photos. "Looking stunning as always. My favorite person. Lucky me getting to work with this one." Public declarations that anyone could see, including our mutual friends. The humiliation was overwhelming. I received messages from people I had not spoken to in years, asking if Meredith and I were still together, asking if something was going on between her and her coworker. I made excuses, defended her, told them they were misunderstanding the situation. But deep down, I knew what it looked like. Everyone could see what I was desperately trying to deny. I approached Meredith again this time with evidence. I showed her the posts, the comments, the pattern that had developed over months. I asked her to help me understand why her coworker was publicly flirting with her and why she seemed to encourage it. Her response caught me off guard. Instead of reassurance, I got anger. She accused me of being controlling, of not allowing her to have friendships, of suffocating her with my jealousy. "Derek is gay Burton," she said with exasperation. "We are just close friends. This is what friends do." But I knew Derek was not gay. I had seen his previous relationship posted publicly online. His ex-girlfriend had tagged him in photos just 8 months earlier. When I pointed this out, Meredith went silent for a long moment before pivoting. "So what? Am I not allowed to have male friends now? Is that what this marriage has become?" She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in our living room, feeling like the villain in my own story. I began questioning my own judgment. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe years of reading about infidelity online had made me see threats where none existed. I apologized to her that night, promised to trust her more, and tried to push my doubts aside, but the distance between us only grew. Meredith started sleeping in the guest room, claiming she needed space to work late without disturbing me. Our conversations became transactional, limited to household logistics and surface-level updates. The warmth that had defined our relationship for years had evaporated entirely. I tried to reconnect. I suggested date nights, weekend getaways, anything to rebuild what we were losing. She declined every invitation with the same excuse: too busy, too tired, too stressed with work. Yet somehow she always had energy for office events, team dinners, and gallery openings that Derek happened to attend. Our 6th wedding anniversary arrived on a Thursday in March. I took the day off work, spent hours preparing her favorite meal, set up candles and flowers throughout the dining room. I wanted to remind her of who we were, what we had built together, why our marriage was worth fighting for. Meredith came home 3 hours late. The food had gone cold. The candles had burned down to stubs. She walked through the door at 11:30, saw the setup, and offered a single sentence. Something came up at work. I asked if Derek was there. She slammed the bedroom door so hard the pictures on the wall shook. That night I called my best friend Garrett. We had known each other since our freshman year of college, had been through every major life event together. He was a divorce attorney now, successful and sharp, the kind of friend who would tell you the truth even when it hurt. "Brother," he said, after listening to everything, "this does not look good. Whatever is happening, you need to start protecting yourself. Document everything. Keep records. I hope I am wrong about this, but if I am not, you will need evidence." I thanked him for the advice, but did not follow it. Not yet. I still believed that if I could just find the right words, the right moment, the right approach, I could bring back the woman I had married. I was not ready to give up on 6 years of memories, 6 years of building a life together, 6 years of believing we were different from the couples who fell apart. I lost 8 pounds over the next month. My performance at work suffered. I could not focus, could not sleep, could not stop replaying every interaction between Meredith and Derek in my mind. My manager noticed the change and pulled me aside, asked if everything was okay at home. I lied and said I was fine. The only thing keeping me together was the hope that Meredith would eventually see what she was risking, that she would choose our marriage over whatever excitement Derek offered, that the woman who had promised to protect what we had would finally show up and fight for us. I decided to try one more time. One final conversation where I would lay everything on the table, express how deeply her behavior was affecting me, and ask her directly to cut off contact with Derek. I spent days preparing what I would say, practicing in my head, hoping that honesty and vulnerability would break through whatever wall she had built around herself. It was a Friday evening in late April when I finally had that conversation. I came home early from work, sat in the living room, and waited for Meredith. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock above the fireplace. I had rehearsed my words 100 times, trying to find the perfect balance between expressing my pain and not pushing her further away. She came home at 11:15 later than she had promised. When she walked through the door, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Her blouse carried a faint trace of cologne, something woodsy and unfamiliar. It was not my scent. I had never worn anything like it. "We need to talk about Derek," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Meredith sighed heavily, dropping her purse on the entryway table. "Burton, not this again." "Yes, this again." I stood up and faced her directly. "For months I have watched you pull away from me. I have seen the messages, the photos, the way you light up when his name appears on your phone. I have felt you choosing him over me, over us every single day. I need you to help me understand what is happening, and I need you to be honest with me." She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, her expression shifting from annoyance to something harder. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I am not accusing you of anything. I am telling you how I feel. I feel like I am losing my wife to another man. I feel like our marriage is falling apart, while you pretend nothing is wrong. I feel like you have stopped caring whether we survive this. Maybe I have stopped caring because you make everything so difficult." Her voice rose with each word. "You question every friendship I have. You monitor my phone, my social media, my schedule. You treat me like a suspect instead of a partner. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? I am not trying to control you," I said, struggling to keep my composure. "I am trying to save us." She laughed, then a cold sound that I had never heard from her before. "Save us, Burton. There is nothing to save. You have turned this marriage into a prison with your constant suspicion and insecurity." The words hit me like physical blows, but I pressed on. "Then tell me the truth. Look me in the eyes and tell me there is nothing going on between you and Derek. Tell me I am imagining all of it." For a long moment, she just stared at me. I searched her face for any sign of the woman I had married, the woman who had promised me forever. What I found instead was a stranger. "You know what, Burton?" She pushed off from the wall and walked toward the bedroom. "If you are so insecure, then just leave. Nobody is forcing you to stay." The sentence hung in the air between us, each word a nail in the coffin of everything we had built. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather, like 6 years of marriage meant nothing at all. Then she disappeared into the bedroom and closed the door, leaving me standing alone in the darkness of our living room. I stood there for what felt like hours. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the walls before fading away. I thought about everything we had been through together, every sacrifice I had made, every time I had chosen her happiness over my own concerns, and I realized something that should have been obvious months ago. I could not make someone fight for a marriage they had already abandoned. I could not love enough for both of us. The woman who had promised to never let anything come between us had already let someone else in, and there was nothing I could do to change that. At 1 a.m, I made a decision. I was done begging, done apologizing for having standards, done feeling like the bad guy for expecting faithfulness from my own wife. If she wanted me to leave, I would leave. But I would do it on my terms. I called Garrett. He answered on the second ring, no questions about the late hour. "I need your help," I said, "tonight. Tell me what you need." I spent the next 3 hours gathering evidence. The iPad in our office was synced to Meredith's phone, something she had apparently forgotten about. I scrolled through months of messages between her and Derek. The conversations confirmed everything I had feared. Flirtatious exchanges that had escalated over time. References to secret meetings, stolen moments, feelings that had no place in a married woman's life. Photographs I wish I had never seen. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Garrett's secure email. Then I pulled our joint credit card statements and found charges I had never noticed before. Expensive dinners at restaurants Meredith had never mentioned. A jewelry purchase in November that I had not received as a gift. 2 hotel bookings in March Both on nights, she had told me she was working late at the office. The evidence painted a clear picture. My wife had been having an affair for months, possibly longer, while I had been making her dinner and washing her clothes and believing every lie she told me. Before dawn broke, I packed a suitcase with my essential belongings, clothes, laptop, documents, the few personal items that mattered to me. I took one last look around the house we had bought together, the home where we had planned to raise children, and felt a strange sense of clarity cutting through the pain. I left a note on the kitchen counter where she would find it when she woke up. 7 words that said everything I needed to say. You told me to leave. I did. Then I walked out the door and did not look back. The following weeks moved quickly. I stayed at Garrett's place while we initiated divorce proceedings. Texas is an at-fault divorce state, which meant Meredith's infidelity could significantly impact the outcome. Garrett connected me with a private investigator who gathered additional documentation, including photographs of Meredith and Derek entering a hotel together and leaving the next morning. I threw myself into work with a focus I had not felt in months. Without the constant emotional drain of my failing marriage, I found clarity and energy I had forgotten I possessed. I completed a major project ahead of schedule, solving problems that had stumped our team for weeks. My manager took notice. My CTO, Mr. Langford, called me into his office and offered me a promotion to technical lead with a 40% salary increase. I accepted the position, but I also started exploring other opportunities. A company in Seattle reached out with an even better offer, a chance to lead a new development team with significant equity options. It felt like the universe was opening doors that had been closed for years, now that I was no longer trapped in a relationship that drained everything from me. 3 weeks after I left, Meredith received the divorce papers. Garrett had them delivered to her office, ensuring she would have to face the reality of her choices in a professional setting. My phone exploded with missed calls and voicemails. Her tone shifted rapidly through the stages of panic. First confusion, then anger, then desperate pleas to talk. She showed up at my workplace demanding to see me. Security stopped her at the entrance because I had already informed them about the situation. I watched from the window of my office as she argued with the guards, mascara running down her face. The confident woman from the holiday party, nowhere to be found. She sent text after text, claiming she could explain everything, that Derek had manipulated her, that she had made a mistake, but still loved me. I read each message and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just the hollow recognition that I had wasted 6 years on someone who never deserved my trust. I responded once. Just once. You said if I was insecure, I should leave. I left. Now I am giving you exactly what you asked for. Freedom. Enjoy it. The divorce proceedings revealed the full extent of her affair. When confronted with the evidence, Meredith's attorney had little room to negotiate. In the final settlement, I kept the majority of our assets, including my retirement accounts and a significant portion of the home's equity. The judge's ruling reflected the documented infidelity, which Meredith could not dispute with the mountain of evidence we presented. In the courtroom during our final hearing, Meredith cried and told the judge she had been seduced, that Derek had pursued her relentlessly, that she was a victim of manipulation. I listened without reaction. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. Your Honor, my wife made choices every single day. She chose to respond to his messages. She chose to meet him privately. She chose to lie to me for months while I tried to save our marriage. She chose him over the vows she made to me. Those were her choices, and she needs to live with them. Meredith looked at me, then really looked at me, perhaps for the first time since everything started. I met her gaze without flinching. There was nothing left to say. When the judge finalized the divorce, I walked out of the courthouse into the warm Texas sunshine. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel vindicated. I just felt free. The first few months after the divorce were harder than I expected. The anger and adrenaline that had carried me through the legal process eventually faded, leaving behind a deep exhaustion. I would wake up in my new apartment in Seattle reach across the bed out of habit, and feel the empty space where someone used to be. I started therapy, something I had always dismissed as unnecessary before. My therapist helped me understand that what I was grieving was not just the marriage, but the future I had imagined, the children we planned to have, the anniversaries we would never celebrate, the person I thought Meredith was, who turned out to never exist at all. I learned to stop blaming myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I learned that some people are skilled at deception, and that trusting my wife was not a character flaw. I learned that healing is not a destination, but a daily practice, something you choose over and over until it becomes who you are. Running became my therapy before therapy. Every morning at 6, I would lace up my shoes and hit the trails near my apartment. The physical exhaustion quieted the thoughts that kept me awake at night. Mile by mile, I ran through my anger, my grief, my confusion, leaving pieces of my old self on the pavement until someone new began to emerge. I reconnected with hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage. I joined a hiking group that explored the mountains around Seattle every weekend. I learned to cook properly, not just microwave meals, but actual dishes that required skill and patience. I read books, something I had not done in years, losing myself in stories that had nothing to do with my own pain. Garrett flew up to visit me several times during that first year. We would go fishing on the weekends, spend hours on the water without talking about anything serious, just two old friends enjoying the silence and the fresh air. He never pushed me to process faster than I was ready. He just showed up consistently the way real friends do. Work provided structure when everything else felt chaotic. My new team in Seattle welcomed me with genuine enthusiasm. They did not know about my divorce, did not know about the wreckage I had left behind in Texas. To them, I was simply their new leader, someone with fresh ideas and energy. I threw myself into the role, and within a year, I had been promoted again to director of engineering. I started keeping a journal, something my therapist suggested, not to dwell on what happened, but to understand it, to trace the patterns that led me to ignore warning signs, to stay longer than I should have, to value being chosen over being respected. The writing helped me see my own blind spots and commit to never repeating them. Occasionally, news about Meredith would reach me through mutual friends who did not realize I preferred not to know. She and Derek lasted 4 months after my divorce was finalized. Apparently, he moved on to another married woman at the agency, leaving Meredith devastated. The scandal that followed cost her the job she had worked so hard to build. Last I heard, she had moved back to her hometown, trying to rebuild a life from the ruins of her choices. I wish I could say I felt satisfaction when I learned this, but the truth is, I felt nothing at all. Her story was no longer connected to mine. Whatever consequences she faced were hers to navigate, just as my healing was mine to pursue. I had released the need for karma to balance the scales. My peace did not depend on her suffering. A year and a half after leaving Texas, I stood on the summit of Mount Rainier. The climb had taken 16 hours, the hardest physical challenge of my life. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for oxygen, and my face was numb from the wind. But when I reached the top and looked out over the sea of clouds below, I felt something I had not experienced in years: freedom. Real, complete, unshakable freedom. Not because I had won the divorce, or proved Meredith wrong, or built a successful career. Freedom because I had finally learned to put myself first, because I had stopped waiting for someone else to validate my worth, because I had discovered that walking away from something that hurts you is not weakness. It is the greatest act of self-respect you can perform. I think about that moment often now, standing above the clouds alone, but not lonely broken, but healing. I think about the man I was when Meredith told me to leave, so desperate for her approval that I had forgotten my own value. And I think about the man I became when I finally listened. She was right in a way. I was insecure, but not about her. I was insecure about my own ability to survive without her. I needed to believe that our marriage was worth saving, because the alternative was too terrifying to face. When I left that night, I discovered something important. The alternative was not terrifying at all. The alternative was freedom. The alternative was peace. The alternative was a life where my happiness did not depend on someone who had already stopped caring about me. If you are watching this and recognizing pieces of your own story, I want you to know something. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is give people exactly what they ask for. If someone tells you to leave, leave. But leave with your dignity intact. Leave knowing that you tried. Leave knowing that their inability to love you properly says nothing about your worth. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can always control how you respond. And your response will define who you become. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone push you away only to regret it when you actually left? What did walking away teach you about yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our experiences helps others find the courage to make the same difficult choices. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Your support helps us reach more people who are going through similar situations. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community. Whatever you are facing right now, remember that you deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation. Never settle for less. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.